Towards Collective Liberation. What I Believe by Chris Crass. When I was 15, I started learning about radical politics. I devoured stories of how other people became active. I looked for lessons in the lives of earlier activists, such as Lucy and Albert Parsons, Emma Goldman, and Alexander Berkman. Studying how other people came to political consciousness helped me take my own initial steps forward. Reading about their lives, the movements they were part of, and the choices they made, helped me think about my own values, beliefs, and theories of how change happens. I began experiencing the challenges of building effective efforts to confront injustices in society. I was hungry for stories of activists going through similar experiences. I read dozens of radical newspapers and zines written by activists who were my peers and more experienced than I was. I was looking for reassurance that what we were attempting to do was possible, and insights for how to make it so. When I have faced tough challenges in my efforts and felt alone and inadequate for the responsibilities of working for profound systemic change, I often asked myself, how can I possibly play a meaningful role in challenging the inequalities of capitalism when I'm not even aware of the ways that my own male and white privilege are hurting the people I'm working alongside? How can we build grassroots movements of millions of people, let alone a self-governing society based on equality and cooperation, when our 12-person activist collective is full of dysfunction and infighting? Am I radical enough, involved enough, experienced enough, well-read enough to be here? Capitalism and other systems of oppression are designed to make almost everyone feel inadequate, isolated, and powerless. The power of these feelings is that even though many of us experience them, and they are ingrained in the culture, most of us think that we are the only ones who feel this way. Such feelings remain with us, even as we question these systems of oppression and work to end them. This is why reading stories of other activists going through similar challenges was so helpful to me. Their experiences helped me see myself as part of the world around me, going through experiences that many others have gone through and are going through now. They helped me place my personal experience into a historical analysis of how things have come to be and a systemic analysis of how political, economic, cultural, and social power operate today. Rather than viewing the shortcomings of my activist efforts as a personal failure, I could place them in this larger framework and draw lessons about how people, organizations, and movements develop, learn, and grow from mistakes as part of the process of working for change. Over the past 23 years of organizing, I've been part of dozens of organizations, coalitions, networks, study groups, project-specific leadership teams, and mass direct action planning teams. My organizing efforts, in particular my year as a coordinator of Catalyst Project, have prioritized political education, supporting other groups to achieve their goals, developing social justice leaders, alliance building, and movement building. I've worked with hundreds of organizations and thousands of activists around the country, and many of them have gone through, or are going through, experiences similar to my own. Supporting people to come together and overcome isolation and feelings of inadequacy is one of the key tasks of organizers, and we can do this by developing a systemic understanding of the problems we face, nurturing relationships of solidarity and respect, building up collective power through action, and working for social change in ways that also help us grow and live our values in the here and now. I have had the honor of doing this in white communities struggling for justice in ways that challenge white supremacy and centralizing anti-racism in their work. Additionally, I've worked with men struggling to challenge male supremacy and further feminist vision and goals in their overall social justice efforts. Organizing with people privileged by the systems of oppression still requires confronting feelings of inadequacy, isolation, and powerlessness, but it also requires working through denial, fear, guilt, and shame. Working with people privileged by systems of oppression to end those systems opens the door to profound possibilities of creating new identities, cultures, communities, and institutions rooted in liberation rather than domination for all of us. Towards Collective Liberation is a collection of essays largely reflecting on lessons from my personal and organizational experience of anti-racist and feminist organizing, while also exploring insights from historical examples of organizing and movement building. The book also includes a section of case study interviews with contemporary anti-racist organizers who embody the vision and strategy of collective liberation that are at the heart of this book. Throughout the process of writing and conducting interviews, I thought often of my teenaged activist self and so many others going through similar experiences of becoming activists. I share my own experience and lessons, as well as those of some of the most outstanding white anti-racist organizers in the country, with the hope that they help you in your own process of developing as an effective, healthy, and visionary long-haul activist organizer and leader. We need liberation movements of millions of people, from all backgrounds, from all walks of life, with a wide range of experiences playing many different roles. Whether you have been involved in social justice work for decades or only a few weeks, the stories and lessons in the chapters to follow can help you on your path. While readers will have different levels of familiarity with all the references, terms, and organizations mentioned in the pages to come, let me be clear. Everyone reading this book is needed in the process of building the powerful and successful movements we need to make the changes crucial for our future. Far too often when words like patriarchy, imperialism, praxis, bottom-up democracy, anarchism, and white supremacy are used, it can feel like they are meant to exclude the people who aren't really in. Systems of oppression are, in part, processes of constant inclusions and exclusions into a hierarchy of superiority and inferiority that structures, enforces, and maintains inequality. Our activism is, significantly, a struggle beyond this hierarchy of inequality that influences the political, economic, cultural, and social institutions of our society, as well as the way we often think. While we oppose it, our activism is nevertheless impacted by this hierarchy, and processes of inclusions and exclusions are reproduced in our organizing. Additionally, U.S. history of genocide, slavery, gender oppression, and class exploitation currently translates into a strong cultural assault on historical thinking and intellectual study. In particular, working-class people, women, transgender and genderqueer people, and people of color are repeatedly told by dominant society that intellectual activity and historical study are beyond their ability and are the exclusive domain of the elite. Stephen Biko, the black consciousness leader in the South American anti-apartheid struggle, said, "The most powerful weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed." He argued that when the subjugated have internalized the logic of a system that oppresses and exploits them, they will submit to, maintain, and even defend the system. He therefore believed that liberating the minds of oppressed people was central to any movement for justice and equality. Through my organizing in white communities with men, I've learned how important it is to liberate the minds of those privileged by the systems of oppression, in particular those who are also simultaneously exploited and oppressed themselves, i.e., white people who are working class or men who are also black. In order to do this, we need to maintain an insurgent grassroots intellectual culture that helps us to learn from history, study theory, use our political imagination, and apply our knowledge in innovative ways to our organizing. Individual and collective consciousness raising, visioning, action, and reflection are key to this process. This book is intended as a contribution to that culture and process. The primary goal of Towards Collective Liberation is to help our movements further develop the visions, strategies, cultures, organizations, practices, and relationships we need to build and win a democratic and socialist society. To further this goal, I would like to share some of the core beliefs that guide me as an organizer and author, and that are the foundation of this book. I believe that all people have the right to quality housing, healthy food, dynamic education, meaningful work, accessible healthcare, and vibrant communities with infrastructure that serves people of all ages and abilities. I believe that people, individually and collectively, have tremendous power to make changes in their lives, communities, and society, to live our values and strive for our dreams. I believe that the history of how things have come to be the way they are is profoundly important to understanding the world around us, who we are in the world, and what kind of world we want to live in. I believe that in the United States, race, class, and gender are socially constructed categories that organize people into a hierarchy of power, privilege, and oppression. Our place in the hierarchy, while it doesn't define us, has a major impact on the opportunities, resources, and experiences of our lives. I believe that capitalism, is a constant process of colonization and exploitation of working people and the earth. However, I also believe that we can create alternative economic models that unleash the creative and productive capacities of our societies in ways that distribute resources fairly and respect our shared dignity and ecosystem. I believe that patriarchy's devaluing assault on women's lives and work is the backbone of capitalism, and that white supremacy is central to how the class structure in the United States has developed. I believe the social norms, economic practices, and political institutions of our society were created through complex historical processes that we can study and understand. Doing so allows us to play an important role in these ongoing processes. I believe in the need for revolutionary change that challenges the deeply rooted, legislated, and enforced inequality and injustice in our society. I believe in revolutionary change that works towards widespread and popularly supported gains for economic, racial, gender, environmental, and social justice. I believe in revolutionary nonviolence that prioritizes nonviolent methods of confrontation with oppression and exploitation, while actively creating the alternatives we seek and need. I believe powerful grassroots people's movements are the primary way we can win and create these changes. I believe that people's movements show us the beauty, resilience, creativity, and heroic courage of everyday people. Going on strike, raising kids with liberation values, leading faith communities to take action, singing at a mass meeting, doing childcare while parents plan a demonstration, outing yourself as queer or undocumented, acting for your politics in your workplace, or providing emotional support to others as we take risks all heal and grow in our work for liberation. There are thousands of ways that we can practice liberation values in the ways we love, live, play, create, and work, while simultaneously organizing and struggling for large-scale change in our workplaces, schools, communities, and institutions throughout society. I also believe that our efforts to build people's movements and make positive change are regularly undermined by the divisions of race, class, and gender. I believe that we can proactively take on these divisions as part of our overall vision and strategy for change, and will build much more powerful, healthy, and effective visionary movements in doing so. I believe that we need to organize ourselves as a left to help build the popular, broad-based movements we need. I believe that ideas, insights, and leadership from different left traditions such as anarchism, Marxism, feminism, revolutionary nationalism, queer liberation, and revolutionary nonviolence are needed as we create a political movement that draws the best from the past and opens space for new visions, ideas, and strategies. I believe that in order to build the multiracial movement we need, white organizers and leaders with a vision of collective liberation need to organize large numbers of white people to work for systemic justice while actively confronting the divide and rule strategy of white supremacy. I believe that in order for our movements to be successful, they need to make feminist vision, strategy, and culture central. Men of all backgrounds and with various degrees of access to male privilege can play a powerful role in this, in part by organizing other men to work for a feminist transformation of our lives, families, communities, institutions, and society. Towards Collective Liberation is not my attempt to put forward definitive answers to the questions before us. Rather, this book is an offering of experiences and lessons based on how I and many others have addressed these questions, with the goal that it will help the reader further develop their own guiding beliefs and theories of how change happens. What we are up against is often what brings us into the movement. Having vision, analyses, and strategy helps us to not just stay in the movement, but be part of creating successful movements that can challenge systems of oppression and help us create systems of liberation. One of the key lessons throughout this book is that we do not simply come up with answers to the questions before us and then apply them. Our answers are continually evolving through a process of studying, developing ideas, putting them into practice, reflecting on our practice, getting feedback on our practice, drawing lessons, and further developing our beliefs and strategies accordingly. I hope this book helps you in your own process of creating liberation praxis. I believe in our ability to win every day in subtle ways and profound ways that move our society towards collective liberation. Let us move forward with vision, courage, and love together. A note on the term collective liberation. Collective liberation comes from Bell Hooks' essay, Love as the Practice of Freedom, in her book Outlaw Culture. She writes, "Until we are all able to accept the interlocking, interdependent nature of systems of domination and recognize specific ways each system is maintained, we will continue to act in ways that undermine our individual quest for freedom and collective liberation struggle." When I first read this groundbreaking essay, I was wrestling with questions of how to bridge the politics of the majority white anarchist-orientated left with the history and analysis I was studying in college. I went to college to learn as much as I could about movement building and focused my study on women of color feminism, freedom movements in communities of color, and multiracial class struggles. The concept of collective liberation from bell hooks resonated deeply. I wanted to know how to develop transformative liberation politics and effective organizing strategy for white people and for men that would help align people with privilege to oppressed people's struggles, united by an overall vision of a free society. In my political organizing and in my college study, the more I focused on feminism, the more often I was the only man. Similarly, the more I focused on racial justice and organizing in communities of color, the more I was the only white person. Often white people and men I talked with about anti-racism and feminism responded, "Those are politics about other people's liberation." This response was in part because one of the only ways I and many others knew how to talk about anti-racism with white people and feminism with men was by challenging them. Challenging racism and sexism in this way was an important intervention to support majority people of color and majority women organizing efforts. But to build broad support for anti-racism in white communities and for feminism among men, it is also necessary to move large numbers of white people and men into active participation in multiracial feminist movement for democracy and socialism. Intervening on oppression, then, is necessary but not enough. What would it look like for white people to develop anti-racist consciousness that unites them with communities of color working for justice and helps white people decolonize their minds from internalized white supremacy? What would it look like for men to develop as feminists in a way that helps them decolonize their minds from internalized male supremacy as they become more effective and powerful activists working for an overall justice agenda with feminism at the center? What would it look like for middle and upper class people to decolonize their minds from capitalism to work in solidarity with working class and poor people for an economic justice agenda with socialist values? If systems of domination are interconnected, then systems of liberation are also interconnected. If systems of liberation are interconnected, then we must help white people, men, and middle and upper class people create and win these systems and go through a transformative process of change while working for systemic change. While personal transformation has always been part of an anti-oppression politics, interconnected liberation brings with it a vision that creates more space for possibilities of who we are becoming, as opposed to just knowing what and how we do not want to be. The term collective liberation, and Hooks's overall analysis of interconnected liberation, resonated with my anarchist politics as I was searching to work with communities whose privilege aligns them to a ruling class worldview and agenda, even when that ruling class worldview and agenda is destroying their lives. With that, collective liberation as a vision of what we want and a strategic framework to help us get there became core to my politics and organizing. There are clearly many ways that different people and communities interpret what collective liberation strategy looks like. A commitment to use different strategies and approaches in the service of an overall vision of collective liberation is crucial to me.